If you're watching this and you didn't have to wait a while for it to load, chances are you have a stable high speed internet connection. And though conditions are improving in places like Eastern Ontario, it means you probably don't live rurally. That's why rural high speed internet access and its impact on both residents and businesses is our focus on today's Eastern Ontario Business Journal podcast. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Eastern Ontario Business Journal podcast. I'm your host, Phil Gaudreau. Now, your definition of high-speed internet can vary. Most define it as a download speed of at least 7 megabits per second. And if you're in a major municipality, that's not that impressive. Most of the big players offer packages into the gigabits per second range, 1 gigabit being 1,000 megabits. But if you live in the country, or if you cottage there from time to time, maybe you run your business out that way, might not be so fortunate. You might have access to high-speed internet, but it's going to be pricey, and its reliability may not be ideal. It could be based off of satellite, which gets interrupted by storms from time to time. Now, if you're at the cottage and you're trying to take your mind off work, no problem, right? Put another log on the campfire, hit the beach, get back to that inbox another time. But what if you're trying to work from home or from the lake? What if you're trying to run your business without having to make a run into town? What if your job went remote and you're thinking the woods makes a better Zoom background than your basement storage room? Today on the show, we're talking rural internet access in Eastern Ontario. And joining us, we have Jim Pine on behalf of the Eastern Ontario Regional Network, Joe Hickey, the founder, president, and CEO of Rock Networks, and Richard Allen, manager of economic development with Frontenac County. We're going to talk about what governments of all stripes are doing, perhaps should be doing, to improve rural internet access in Eastern Ontario. What are some of the challenges in getting high-speed access out to the countryside, and how the pandemic has changed that conversation over the past 2 years. Before we begin, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and stay notified about future videos from the Ottawa Business Journal. First up, we have Jim Pine on behalf of the Eastern Ontario Regional Network. Hi, Jim.
Hi, Phil. How are you doing?
Oh, doing all right. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
What is the Eastern Ontario Regional Network?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We get asked it a lot. It's actually an organization. It's a municipal not-for-profit corporation that was set up by a group called the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus. And for your listeners or the viewing members of this podcast, it really is represents the 13 counties of Eastern Ontario. So from the region of Durham boundary in the west, all the way to the Ottawa River, with the exclusion of the city of Ottawa, the counties that make up that region, we call ourselves East Ontario Wardens Caucus. And it was their vision that we needed better connectivity in Eastern Ontario. And we've been working at it since about 2009. But it's a municipal not-for-profit corporation that brings the federal, provincial, local, and private sectors together to do broadband projects on a region-wide basis. It's about the same area as the province of Nova Scotia that we're trying to serve.
Wow. And, I don't want this point to get lost. Since 2009. So this is not a pandemic-driven thing. This is not even a new problem, right?
No.
This is something you've been trying to tackle for a while.
Exactly. It started out as being the most important economic development project that the region felt it needed. We recognized back that being connected as a region was absolutely essential. It was long before the pandemic, but it was pretty clear that this was a tool that we all needed in order to grow and prosper in the region.
So could you tell me a little bit about what advocacy looks like for EORN right now, and how you're focused on particularly businesses in Eastern Ontario?
Yeah, absolutely. We know that because we all do our own assessment of what the business community needs in our counties, but across the region, for years now, the number one thing that we've heard about is the need for businesses to be able to connect to their customers, to connect to the world from their locations around Eastern Ontario. And there are a lot of problems for folks in getting connected in the first place and getting enough bandwidth in the second instance. So it's a key economic or key tool that business needs in order to grow and prosper, whether you're in the tourism industry or any other kind of business, actually.
Mm-hmm. So are there any particular projects or areas of concern, areas of growth in that very large Nova Scotia-esque sized area that you guys are really paying attention to right now?
Yeah, we actually, it's everywhere. that needs better connectivity, but particularly in our rural communities across Eastern Ontario. There is, decent connectivity in some of the cities and some of the small towns now as fiber and other projects roll out. But we continue to be concerned about good connectivity. And I would include in that, and this is our second project that EORN is doing, mobile broadband or mobile wireless connectivity, so cell services. And that's really the project that we've got going on now. It's a $300 million public-private partnership to improve cellular access and capacities across Eastern Ontario. And our partner is Rogers Communications in this one. So it's a big effort for us right now that's underway.
Sure. So people can find out more about that project on your website. I was reading a little bit about before our interview, but what's the latest on that project? Is it rolling out at the moment? Where can people learn?
Yeah. There's two parts to that project. I'll be really brief. There's two parts to the project. Rogers has an existing footprint, as you know, across Eastern Ontario, about 300 sites that, as part of our project, they're upgrading to 5G capable status. So those upgrades on the existing towers are going along really well. We've probably got about 190 or so of the 300 done already, so better service. And the second part is building about 265 new cell towers across the region to close the gaps in coverage where we have them. And those are moving along. There's a number that have started construction and will be coming online shortly. But the whole project needs to be done by the end of 2025. It's a big effort, but we're well underway.
Now, you mentioned Rogers. Is that specifically benefiting Rogers customers, or does that anybody on the network?
Well, of course, Rogers will have roaming agreements with other partners, but largely it was a competitive bid process that we went through, and Rogers came out the end as being a successful partner for us.
Okay. I talked about how this has been going on since 2009 for you guys, and is going to be kind of an ongoing, continuing challenge, especially in a large area like that. But how have you seen the focus and the discussion change around rural internet access since the beginning of the pandemic?
It has actually, I think, highlighted the incredible need for better connectivity. With people staying home, with students wanting to learn online or needing to learn online, right across the gamut. The health sector is relying on it more and more and more. It has only become more important to our region to be the best connected that we can be. We have a goal actually that we set all those years ago to be the best connected region in North America, because we knew how important it was. But it's something that isn't a one and done effort, and that's why we're into the cellular side right now. So we have to keep going because the demand for it is exponential, and the pandemic only made that more significant.
Okay. Jim Pine with the Eastern Ontario Regional Network. As you say, the demand continues to grow. It continues to expand. It's one of those moving targets that you're never quite done with. Thank you for your observations. I want to get a different perspective on that same matter. So we're going to invite in Joe Hickey, who's the founder, president, and CEO of Rock Networks, and a subject matter expert on internet access in rural areas. Joe, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Phil.
So tell us a little bit about Rock Networks.
Yeah, so Rock Networks is a company that I founded really in 2016, and we're an end-to-end communication systems integrator offering wireless and broadband solutions. So through the history of the company, I've acquired two companies, one in Nova Scotia, both actually in Nova Scotia. Nova Communications I acquired in 2017 to help with the wireless side of the business. We provide two-way radio communications, broadband, wireless, Wi-Fi networks, capabilities. We operate nationally, so we have offices in Ottawa, in Lethbridge, Alberta, St. John's, Moncton, New Brunswick, and our largest site is in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. In January of last year, I acquired Acadian Communications, a rural wireless ISP in Nova Scotia, to expand our capabilities in that area. And as part of that, we've transformed to really focus on rural broadband as the key market for the company to bridge the digital divide in Canada.
Okay, so the times are changing and you're changing with the times. Good to see. And so Did anything Jim just talked about kind of resonate with you, especially from the internet service provider side? Some of the same sort of challenges and demands you're hearing from home and business internet customers.
Yeah, so certainly if you think about the transformation that has happened due to COVID, work from home it became a necessity because everybody had to work from home. So if
Hmm.
you think about in an office environment, a lot of the communications happens on the local area network, right? So, you're sharing files within the office. Now all those files go into the wide area network, right? Every time you send an email, it goes to everybody over the WAN. And so the increase in traffic on the network has been staggering, which the telcos have found, as well as ISPs. So that's been a bit of a challenge in terms of upgrading the network infrastructure to handle that. From an ISP perspective, you need fatter pipes into the network, and so organizations like EORN, which provide kind of a backbone connectivity in the eastern region, help with the cost of that from an ISP perspective.
Okay. That increased focus that has been, I'm sure a blessing in disguise. As you say, it's more work for you guys, but more attention paid to rural internet and home internet access. Um, is that attracting more competition? Is that proving to be more of a challenge or an opportunity for your business?
Well, COVID, we were actually focused on rural broadband before COVID
Mhm.
happened. But COVID was basically a defining event, I guess, in terms of the federal and provincial governments getting on board. Compelling event, I guess we would call it in sales vernacular. Since the beginning of COVID, about 6 months in, Ontario announced the Ontario Icon program, originally 150 million, then became 1.2 billion, and then with the accelerated high-speed internet program, Ontario's put up 4 billion to connect Ontarians to a 50-10 connection by 2025. The federal government has 2.75 billion in the Universal Broadband Fund. Plus, they've invested 3 billion in Canada Infrastructure Bank to provide low-interest loans, including to First Nation communities, of which broadband infrastructure is an eligible expense. And then other provinces like Quebec, Alberta, and BC have also kicked in, north of $400 million each. So in the last 2 years, over $10 billion of investment has come into the market. So that's created a significant opportunity for Rock Networks. We're actually a new entrant into the market. So we become part of the new competitive landscape because now we can afford to build with these government subsidies and low interest loans, these high capacity networks that people are looking for.
Awesome. So I think it's safe to say then you're a fan of some of the actions you're seeing from the government in the last few years.
Yes, the investments from the federal and provincial governments have been excellent in terms of their focus on bridging the digital divide.
I want to bring back something Jim said earlier, right? Which is this is kind of a moving. I mean, well, okay, maybe I put the words in his mouth. It's a bit of a moving target, but it does seem like it's a constant. I'll say arms race, right? If we want to be the most connected
Yep.
area in North America, then that requires constant competition, constant innovation. So, where do you see this going next?
Well, if you look at the history of broadband, when Nova Communications, the company I acquired, built the original broadband in Nova Scotia, it was 2 megabit down and a half megabit up, right? So that was
Ooh,
broadband back in 2007 to 2010.
nice. Yeah.
So I liken speeds to, it's sort of like air. Whatever speed
Hmm.
you have, you will fill the available pipe, right? Air will fill the available space. And so the trend towards gigabit connectivity is accelerating. More people want more speed. The current definition, I think one area that the government could work on is to focus on enabling even higher speeds beyond 5010. But they're trying to create a national mandate, so not every area is going to get fiber in Canada overnight, right? So, but by 2030, I would see that we'll have a new definition of broadband beyond 5010 that will, maybe the baseline will be 100 meg symmetrical type connections, because as we get on calls like Zoom and Teams and those kind of applications, the bandwidth up and down needs to be the same. So symmetrical type connectivity is going to be more important as we move forward for sure.
Very interesting. Thank you for your time this morning, Joe.
Thank you.
On the note of government investment, so we invited Minister Steve Clark, who's Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing with the province, and he's also MPP for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes. He was unable to attend this morning. He did send along a statement, which we're going to post in full in the YouTube description for this video. But I did want to read a little excerpt. And Richard Allen, who's going to join us in a moment, Economic Development for Frontenac County. Maybe Richard will have a bit of a take on this as well. So in September 2021, Ontario launched a competitive process led by Infrastructure Ontario, where internet service providers bid for the opportunity to provide access to high-speed internet service for designated areas across the province. The process is nearly finalized, and we expect to announce the project soon. This was sent within the last week or so. This will have an enormous impact on closing the gap for homes and businesses that remain underserved. So I hope we'll hear more on that process soon from Minister Clark's office and the Ontario government. In the meantime, I want to welcome on Richard Allen. He's Manager of Economic Development for Frontenac County. Richard.
Hello.
So is high-speed internet access in your area a topic you still hear about regularly from businesses and residents?
It certainly is. We conduct an annual business survey every year where we ask our businesses, what is the biggest barrier to growing your business or expanding your reach of your business in Frontenac County? And access to appropriate internet or even any internet is usually the main barrier, with about 40% of respondents saying that this is a key issue for them going forward. And I think that that's only increased since the pandemic has come into our lives.
Mm-hmm. So I bet you're eagerly anticipating those announcements from the province to see if you're going to be getting some better service in areas like South Frontenac, North Frontenac. Are there particular hotspots in your area that, or is it just kind of difficult everywhere?
Well, I mean, it is difficult everywhere. Frontenac County is probably the most rural and with some of the most difficult geography in terms of Eastern Ontario. Our population density is much lower than many of our neighbors, and we have a lot of Canadian Shield to work around in terms of laying backbone networks down, and I'm sure Jim Pine, who was on here earlier, is very familiar with all of that. So we'll be interested to see what kind of bids come through that can overcome some of these obstacles for our communities.
Yeah. So is internet access particularly in your area, but in rural Eastern Ontario at this point dragging economic growth? Do you think is a deterrent to businesses and remote workers?
Yeah, I certainly do. We have an incredible set of lakes and trails and outdoor lifestyle here, but in order to enjoy that and work from home, we have to have that connectivity, whether that's running your own business. So we have something about 40% of our businesses are either are entrepreneurs or small businesses run from the home or self-employed businesses in Frontenac County. So we have a high level of this independent business work happening, and so we need to have support for those folks to connect. And then access to services is becoming more and more over the internet. Training is done over the internet, or courses is done over the internet, and so having connectivity to engage in the various web conferencing platforms to participate in these webinars or to learn to run simultaneous streams, it's almost impossible. And you just have to live stream any of our council meetings to kind of get a sense of some of those difficulties.
Mm-hmm. So we're hearing, a lot of great rhetoric from all governments, as Joe summed up for us nicely, at a lot of different levels, saying we're investing in broadband access, we're investing in high-speed internet access. Would you say the rhetoric around dollars and investment is being matched with action?
Certainly there, we're seeing results and hoping to see results come from the mobile projects led by EORN, and we're a participant in that project. From a broadband standpoint, we have yet to sort of see what might come out of that. So we are waiting. Some of the things that we're considering is what we might be able to do to help make bids more attractive in our region, and through making municipal assets available, or looking at other types of sort of last mile incentives to kind of help make that work in our community. And we'll be doing some research over the course of this year to kind of bring forth and see what kind of bids are sort of emerging, to see if we're part of that, and if we're happy with that, so that we can decide how to make that last mile happen for us.
Okay, we'll just have to promise them some of the delicious goodies coming out of Frontenac County these days. Maybe that'll help. It's possible. Anything will work. Richard Allen, thank you for your time from Frontenac County. That's all the time we have this week to discuss this important topic. I want to thank Jim Pine from the Eastern Ontario Regional Network. I want to thank Joe Hickey from Rock Networks. And I also want to thank Richard Allen, who you just heard from Frontenac County, for joining us to discuss this important topic. For more on rural broadband access and all sorts of business news affecting Eastern Ontario, you'll want to head over to obj.ca. The Eastern Ontario Business Journal podcast is made possible by these sponsors: the City of Cornwall, the County of Leeds-Grenville, County of Renfrew. Join us in August when we discuss hiring, different strategies for diversifying your workforce and meeting hiring gaps. Until next time, I'm Phil Gaudreau. Thanks for joining us.